So I built this circuit in the last video. The only thing missing here is control. You want to be able to control the LED. Maybe sometimes you want to turn it on, maybe sometimes you want to turn it off. So the only way you can do that is by using a button. I'll use these push buttons as switches. So what the switch does is it breaks the connection from the positive rail to the LED, which stops the flow of electricity. That's why it turns off. But if the contacts inside the switch are pushed down, it reconnects that path, which allows electricity to flow. Now this is the most important concept, so I'm going to start drawing the circuits on paper so it's easier to follow. For an electric circuit to work properly, it needs a complete path from positive 5 volts to ground. This allows current to flow through it. After we add the switch, it creates this disconnect between the positive 5 volts and the LED, so it cannot turn on unless the switch is depressed and it reconnects this wire like so. So what happens when you connect two switches to the circuit? And let's have positive 5 volts going through the first switch and the output of this switch going into the input of this switch. So now that we've connected two of the switches like this, one after the other, we've created another disconnect in the conductor. So now both switches have to be depressed for the LED to turn on. If switch 1 is pressed, the LED doesn't turn on. If switch 2 is pressed, the LED still doesn't turn on. But if both the switches are pressed, switch 1 and switch 2, then the LED turns on. That might be useful, so let's write it down and call this the AND circuit. But what happens if we take two switches and connect both of their inputs together and their outputs together, and then just connect that to the circuit, and this goes to the LED? Yeah, you know it. So I've wired this circuit up here, and let's see what happens when you press the buttons. If I press the first button, it turns on. If I press the second button, it still turns on. If I press both, it's still on. So if I press switch 1 or I press switch 2, then the LED turns on. That also sounds useful, so let's call it the OR circuit. Now this is because if switch 1 is depressed, then it completes the top branch of the circuit and allows electricity to flow from positive 5 volts to ground. The same is true if switch B is pressed. The bottom branch turns on, which allows electricity to flow.